Hey, everybody. So, this is my first Swifty video of many, many that will follow. So, I, like a lot of people, have been listening to the 10-minute version of All Too Well. I was not familiar with the song before my best friend put the SNL performance on a few weeks ago, and we listened to it. We actually spent a couple hours like watching most of the 1989 concert video, which is quite a spectacle. If you, in case you haven't seen it, I've always been a really big fan of the songs "Love Story" and "Blank Space" by T Swift, but I'm not overly familiar with the rest of her catalog, to be honest. It's one of those cases where I love those two songs so much that I like never really delved into the rest of the catalog because I felt that the rest of it could not match how good those songs are, which can be like a very naive way to deal with music, but like that's how I am a lot of the time, unfortunately, when I encounter a banger. So I'll throw out. So I'm going to be talking about some like long ballady type breakup songs that you might want to listen to in case you are really into the 10-minute All Too Well, but you've already listened to it like 30 or 40 times now at least, and you want to listen to something that gives you that same kind of vibe while being a different song. We'll go into a few of those, but I'll throw out some honorable mentions first. Um, the song "Kill Kelly Ireland" is definitely not a breakup song by any means. It's like a chronicle, like a family chronicle, but it is like extremely depressing, and it's about 7 minutes long or so, like maybe even a little bit less. But there's like a good like 5 verses. It's got like that repetitive nature to it. It was written by actually an American. I did not know this until I just looked it up, but an American named maybe Pete Jones, uh, which is kind of weird. But there's a lot of versions of the song. It goes like "Killed Kelly, Ireland, 18 and 16," like, and it keeps on like giving these different dates, and then he's reading letters from like his family, and like it's somebody who lives in America and he's reading letters from his family. And like I love it, I mean, it makes me cry, but it's really passionate. There's a lot of versions, but I think like the more famous ones are probably the one by Jimmy Keane, and then there's one by I guess a guy named Jim Brannigan. I mean, there's a lot of versions by Irish singers, like, as you can imagine, because there's of the great tradition of Irish folk music and of doing covers, doing trad songs, if you will. Another honorable mention is just the whole album, "The Hazards of Love" by the Decemberists. I was hanging out with, my brother's friend over the summer, and we talked a lot about the Decemberists, and he was like, "Oh, I've never met anyone who like likes that album before." Like he said that, and I was like, "Well, I love that album. Like I think it's like it's an incredible piece of art, The Hazards of Love." And then we talked a lot about like just the Decemberists in general. Hazards of Love is not my favorite album. I would say that uh, Picaresque is their best. It's incredible, but they're both incredible. But The Hazards of Love, it really is like one long song. I mean, it's written like that. It's like a musical or a concept album or what have you. So it doesn't really fit into the parameters of this, but in case you are looking for songs about heartbreak, it's a great place to start. It's also about like fairy magic though, so it's not really about like writing in your diary about somebody who doesn't love you anymore. It's about like being beguiled in the woods and then like tragically dying later in a sort of Shakespearean fashion. So a little bit of a different vibe. Uh, I think that'll be it for the moment for honorable mentions. I'm gonna mention some other songs in addition to the 4 that I'm gonna lay out. I didn't get like an even 5, which would have been nice, but I wanted to give you like 4 that I think do fit the criteria like pretty well. Okay, number 1 is Inmates by The Good Life. The Good Life is Tim Kasher's second most famous band after Cursive, I would say. Though there are a lot of people that prefer The Good Life. In particular, the album that this comes from is one of Tim Kasher's most successful albums, if I understand correctly. Probably second behind The Ugly Organ. Being a person that has an ugly organ tattoo, albeit a really bad one, I'm obviously, biased. I mean, Cursive is one of my favorite groups of all time, but I really, really like The Good Life as well. Inmates is a 9-minute song. I don't know if you would really call it a ballad, because it's I don't know. If you listen to it, I don't think it has ballad qualities because I don't know. I mean, that's not really fair. I mean, it's telling a story for sure, but it's just a very long song. It feels less like a ballad and just a song with a lot of stanzas, a lot of verses, if you will. So I don't really know why I'm being nitpicky about that, but that's just that is the way I feel. That it's not super repetitive either. Maybe that's the thing why it doesn't feel like a ballad, because there's very little repetition up until like the end of the song. And the chorus doesn't really kick in until the end of the song, kind of, like, if I understand correctly. I've listened to the song hundreds of times, but I don't want to mislead you too much about the structure, which is brilliant, and the recording is so good. It's like, really peak Saddle Creek sort of production from, I'm sure like Mike Mogus probably produced it, like, I imagine. And of course, like, everyone these days, like, for the past 10 years, 15 years, has like really, cribbed from the sort of modern take on Americana that Saddle Creek was doing in the early 2000s. So shout out to Saddle Creek, of course. I'm like a big Saddle Creek fan, as you can imagine. And I want those people to get credit, because, like, you wouldn't have like Bon Iver winning Grammys without, like, Saddle Creek making all those records, starting with bands like, Lullaby for the Working Class, and like, I mean, Slow Down Virginia was like a straight up rock band, but it was like Tim Kasher's first band. But that scene is awesome, and I love it. So Inmates is sung by a woman named Jiha Lee. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. So it was written by Tim Kasher, and he does sing it live when they play, because she doesn't tour with him. I don't think she's toured with The Good Life in a while. But so I mean, it's the only song on this list, unfortunately, sung by a woman. So that's kind of why I wanted to start with it, because I don't want to be like, oh, here's a bunch of songs that sound like All Too Well, and then just have like all guy vocalists. First of all, I'm a big fan of women singing, because I think that and we're living in like a golden age of like women singer-songwriters. It's like terrific, and I'm really happy for them. But I wish I could include more on here. I couldn't really think of any like other super long, like, ballady songs about heartbreak by women. So Inmates by The Good Life. Here's Isabella. So I'll give you the best line. When you said you'd leave me, why haven't you left me? What are we still doing here? So desperate for company. And if I get another Tim Kasher tattoo ever, it's probably going to be the phrase "so desperate for company," because it just sums up like a lot of, like, feelings that I've had in my life. I come from a big family, so like I'm not super comfortable with like being on my own for any long period of time. So I've become better at it. The main metaphor of this song, Inmates, of course, it's a little like on the nose, a little heavy-handed for like a heartbreak song. but I think it works. I mean, the lyrics are awesome. And if you like this album, which is called Album of the Year, then definitely don't sleep on the earlier Good Life album, which is called Blackout, because Blackout, more so than Album of the Year, I would say, Blackout is basically like one long song in a similar way to Hazards of Love, with more traditional like instrumentation. In particular, there's like three different Blackout parts, like one in the beginning, one in the middle, and one in the end, which are like you know the same piece of music interpolated in different ways. Cool. So number two, and here I'll give a serious trigger warning that this song does have lyrics about self-harm and suicide ideation. So definitely don't listen to this song if you have issues with that. And seriously, if you do have feelings like you want to harm yourself, and you need someone to talk to, please leave a message in the comments anytime. Like I'll get in contact with you. I'm happy to listen. I used to be a bartender. I'm very good at listening to people's problems, and your problems are valid, and your life is valid, and people want you around, I promise. And thanks for watching, of course. So this song of Montreal called No Conclusion. It is about 9 minutes long. Interestingly was left off of the album Hissing Fauna, Are You the Destroyer, which is definitely a breakup album, and probably like one of the best titles for a breakup album ever, right? But I mean, it's just, and there's the long there's another very long song on Hissing Fauna, Are You the Destroyer, which people are more familiar with because I think it was kind of like a single. If not, it's just one of the more famous of Montreal songs, and it's freaking great too, called The Past is a Grotesque Animal. And the past is a grotesque animal is like very repetitive. It it has that like looping kind of quality to it. Very like electro, like very like almost like very techno. No Conclusion is a bit different in that it changes a lot as there's more there's pianos, and the tempo changes like a couple of times significantly. And this is probably the most compositionally challenging achievement among the songs I'm going to talk about today, because I love the way that the song changes. I'm a total sucker for songs that change significantly from the beginning to the end, because it's just I like art that takes risks, and this certainly does. So yeah, I mean, so he left it off of the album proper in the beginning. I think it was on the vinyl that was issued maybe at the same time as the album came out. I don't know. We're talking about 2004 or 5 or so. So we're not talking about too much digital release besides iTunes, of course, must have existed around that time. But I do think that this song is on the end of the regular vinyl version of Hissing Fauna, Are You the Destroyer? But the way I was introduced to it was as the ending of the EP that came out shortly after Hissing Fauna, or maybe around the same time, a companion EP called Icons Abstract V, which has one of my favorite album covers of all time. It's a horse with a painting of a guy on a horse, but the guy and the horse have flowers for heads. I don't know. It's super, abstract and dreamy, but I think it's very cool. This song, I mean, I'll give you a my favorite line, which sums up the song very well, and the line is, "I never ever wanted to write this song. I always thought things would change somehow, and we would start getting along, but it's hopeless." And okay, the cello slash strings outro to this song It's one of the more beautiful instrumental outros to like a long piece of music that I've ever heard. It's like up there with like the outro to the Leftover Crack album, Fuck World Trade, which is like one of my favorite albums of all time. Um, so yeah, I mean, if if you can deal with all those topics, if you, especially if you like of Montreal and are not familiar with this song, which I don't know, would, it's possible because of Montreal just has so much music that they've put out. Like, in the days before streaming, like, we would download all these of Montreal albums, like, whatever at the time. Like, I'm talking about 15 years ago, like, we would still, there were already like 15 albums, and it was one of those things where you would like put them, the whole entire thing on shuffle and be like, and looking for the great ones, the great songs. So similar to like Guided by Voices or like Tom Waits or something. Um, but yeah, an incredible song, which has really stuck with me like since I first heard it, and always kind of amazes me. And just sonically, it was like really well recorded and like conceived and executed. And if you like the way that All Too Well by T Swift, changes sonically, like the new version does, and goes into that like kind of uh, synthesizer, like low key synthesizer realm, like towards the end, like I think you might like the way that No Conclusion changes from the beginning to the end, especially like how it finishes up. Um, Great. So, um, number 3 is a song called Constantine by the band Something Corporate. So we're getting to like over, second wave emo territory here, like big time. And I had to throw in, I'm a big like emo person, like that's what I came up on. So I had to throw in something like this, even though I was never like really into this band. Um, Excuse me, but and there's different versions of this song out there, I think, that are like different lengths. But the one I just like re-listened to. I don't really listen to this song very often, but the one I just re-listened to is 9 minutes. So it fits into the parameters as as it were, rather. And the piano lick that the song is built around is like, it's kind of a little bit, I mean, not upbeat, but it's kind of quick. And I think the song it will appeal to like Swift fans because like it's super sincere. The lyrics are not like super, and they're not really like metaphorical at all. It's like very much just like this is what happened. You know what I mean? It might have felt metaphorical to him when he was writing it, but he doesn't leave a lot to like the imagination of what's going on in this situation. Um, and it's definitely the worst song on this list, I would say. But I do like it for like nostalgia reasons. Before I get into the best line, I'm gonna say like the worst line is like this one where he's like, "Oh, you're really young, but like I don't know, but it's okay" or something. I don't know. He says something really weird like that, so that's not good. Um, Especially what we know about that whole second wave emo scene, and now it's just like a meme about like that there was a lot of predation and a lot of like grooming and stuff like that. So bad news bears on that from that angle. Um, and I don't know a lot about Andrew McMahon, whether he was like caught up in anything like that. I haven't really looked it up. Um, and the best line we'll have to say is the one where he like overtly talks about Jimmy Eat World because that's just like how much more second wave emo can you get than like literally talking about like Jimmy Eat World, who kind of like made it bigger than a lot of those other bands in a sense because the middle was the middle, which isn't really I mean, sure, it's still an emo song, whatever. I mean, it's a power pop song, whatever. Um, but Jimmy Eat World sort of famously being like from that scene, and really kind of the way that I was introduced to emo music, I guess, like was through Jimmy Eat World, which is strange to think about. Not that I was ever really that into that band, even though The Sweetness is a freaking rad song for sure. Um, so yeah, I mean, the song is super sincere. I don't know, like if you can stand Andrew McMahon's like kind of whiny, nasally voice, like you might like it. If you like Coldplay, you'll probably will like this song because it's like got like similar vibes to, those like super depressing Coldplay songs, which are like my favorite, which are like The Scientist and like Trouble, and you know the actual song where he says the phrase "a rush of blood to the head"? Is it called that as well? I'm not really sure. But shout out to Coldplay. I mean, they don't need me to shout them out, but they have some good songs, of course. Like, and even though it is fun to rag on them as well, but it's fun to rag on a lot of music. And if you want something to rag on, like, feel free to dig into Constantine with a K by Something Corporate, because if you're looking for like an easy target, like, I've definitely found you one. And if you're looking to cry, like, this might help out as well too. Right? All right. This last one, I am cheating a bit because this is not one long song. According to the tracks of the digital release. If you have this on vinyl, like, it'll sound like one long song. It was recorded essentially as, I don't know if it was recorded in one session, but the way that the tracks are blended together, it sounds like one song. So we're talking about the Nikki Suite from the Dreams' third album, the album being called Love King. So the songs are Yamaha, Nikki Part 2, and Abyss. And they flow really well together. I mean, if you listen to them all together, it's going to sound as much like one song as, for instance, like Jesus of Suburbia does, which is, and there's very similar like tonal shifts and tempo shifts to like a song like Jesus of Suburbia, which is a great Green Day song, in my opinion. Let's see. I mean, here's a trigger warning for sure as well, that the third song does have like a violent metaphor at the center of it. The Dream says something like, he wants to put your heart where it belongs, which is at the bottom of a lake. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, I think it's a metaphor. I think it's fairly innocuous enough. But that being said, violence against women is evil, and if you are traumatized, like, I would by violence, I don't, you might want to avoid this song. Like the way I feel about music versus like television or movies, for instance, is like, I think that like movies like Hostel are much more dangerous to as far as like depicting violence against women than like a song which is like uses a metaphor. And then I also think like I think that people talk about other people's lyrics sometimes, but they're they don't want to call out like very successful shows like Law and Order SVU or Criminal Minds or something, which are literally based around like almost every episode is like a woman, maybe not on camera, but like a woman has to get like murdered, you know what I mean? Or like, and that's like the basis of this show. And people don't really get mad at those showrunners for like that being a part of their art, I don't think. So I mean, that's how I feel. But if you don't want to listen to this song because of that, like, it's I totally understand that. I don't want anyone to get traumatized here for sure. I mean, amazing group of songs, like the way that they go together. Yamaha is like the Dream's other song, Fast Car. It's a sort of overt Prince like homage. Because Prince had like Little Red Corvette, so here he has like Yamaha, like, and again, like, these are the Dream has these very like paper thin metaphors, like he's saying like the woman is like motorcycle. Okay, like I mean, it's not it's not brilliant lyrically, but it works in terms of like it's pop R&B. If you are not interested in this suite of songs because of any of the aforementioned things, I do want to recommend another The Dream song. So again, like, I'm sort of going off base here, but it's a sort of breakup song itself and I just think it's one of the most underrated The Dream songs. It's called Mr. Yeah. So instead of choosing a line from the Nikki Suite, from Love King, from Yamaha, Nikki Part 2, or Abyss, I do want for this best line, for the best line from that I want to talk about is I want to give you a little bit of a line from Mr. Yeah, which I think is on the second The Dream album. Not entirely sure, but incredible song, Mr. Yeah. So here's the line. He says, "Yeah, I get it. You wanted a little boyfriend, so you went and got one. But you know, like I know, that he can't love you like I do. So whenever you want to come back and stand beside me," and then it goes, "You can always come back." That's like the end. Very much like a, I know I sounded like I was going for like a, like a Backstreet Boys, like, "Am I your fire?" But it's very much sung like that. The outro to Mr. Yeah is like when you keep saying, "You can always come back," and like the synthesizers are like really, really wild, like really, really good. Um, so maybe check out Mr. Yeah if you're not familiar with The Dream at all, because it's just one of his best songs. Similar to like "Rockin' That Shit," or like I'm trying to, FILA. Like, well, The Dream, he rarely misses, in my opinion. But and if you are a Dream fan and you're not familiar with the Nicki Suite, it's compositionally, it's pretty intense and like very interesting. I think it clocks out at like 12, 13 minutes if you put all these tracks together. So that's it. Let me know about any very long breakup songs or just regular breakup songs that you are really into in the comments when you get a chance. Isabella was okay, but she really wants to play tug of war. But thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that if your hearts are broken, that you feel better soon. Things get better. Take care.